Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I've got another little video here for you. It's on the Black Dahlia. I mean, even I'm getting tired of figuring out things that Frank Morris did, but it turns out to be that just about everything that's unsolved in this country had to do with Frank Morris. But when you think about it, he's the guy that had the intellect to be able to pull it off and not get caught. Now, I'm also going to make a video, if I don't add it to this video, of the Mothman of Point Pleasant, because Frank did that one too. You know, I've looked at these crimes before and said, no, I don't think so, but people keep bringing them back to me, telling me that they think these guys did it, and then I start remembering things that Frank told me about these crimes when I was in Mexico City. Now, with the Black Dahlia, she was killed in January of 1947. Frank was in, I don't know, reform school or something, and then he was in prison, I forget where now, but he was released on good behavior in December of 1946. The Black Dahlia murder was done in January of 1947, a month later. Another thing about this that lends to Frank Morris is that he sent a collage to the press. And I'm going to go over that collage in a minute and tell you some of the things on there that fit Frank and the Zodiac killer thing. And another thing that Frank did was that he sent out several letters about this Dahlia murder, and I haven't been able to get my hands on any of them. If anybody out there's got some links, please tell me about them, send them to me so that I can go look into this, because I will remember more if I can read more of the letters. But he signed some of these letters the Avenger, or just Avenger. Now, the Avengers were comic book characters, so we're back to the comic book thing, the same thing that he did with the D.B. Cooper jump. So you know it's the same guy, and that things are related here. Now, what I recall about Black Dahlia was, you know, Frank was always telling him he was taking people, and I was always asking, where are you taking them? And he never would tell me, but except that he did give me the story about they're going to be our slaves in hell. And that comic book about the red mask thing that Frank used, that I have a video on that you can watch. All these things I'm telling you about I have videos on. I think for right now, let me just go into this collage. So let me show it to you. If you look at it carefully, it says, "Here is Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow." I'm going to put it up again. At the very top of it, it says Los Angeles Examiner and other Los Angeles papers. Now, another thing that you'll notice is that there's two stamps on the right-hand corner. A 3-cent stamp and what looks like a second 3-cent stamp. That's 6 cents. Back in the 40s, I think it cost probably 2 cents to mail a letter. Now, Frank was known for putting excess postage on his Zodiac killer letters to the press. I mean, we're here with a letter to the press, we're here with a collage, we're back to Frank Morris, we're back to the D.B. Cooper thing with the collages, and the Zodiac killer with the collages. I mean, put two and two together. But I'm going to tell you a couple more things. Like I said at the top, it says Los Angeles Examiner and other Los Angeles papers. In other words, he's sending it to the papers. And you may remember that I've told you many times, and if you haven't, and if you don't remember, read my book. It's in my book. Frank was always telling me to read the papers. That was kind of common terminology for the newspaper back then. They called it the papers. And Frank was always saying, read the papers. And he sent messages as the Zodiac killer that had to do with the papers. And it says, here is the Dahlia's belongings. Belongings. That was a term that he used at Lake Berryessa when they tied those kids up there and stabbed them. He said, we're not going to hurt you. We just want your belongings. It was another common terminology from his, childhood. And then letter to follow. I seem to remember one of the Zodiac killer letters had a letter to follow at the end of it, or something to follow. He always wanted to keep you in suspense, keep people interested in his craziness. So this whole collage on the Black Dahlia just reeks of Frank Lee Morris and the Anglin brothers. As I said, he signed a lot of his letters Avenger. There's no signature on this one, but it sure looks like there's a lot of fingerprints on it. I can't believe that maybe back then, because this was according to him was his first taking someone. Maybe he didn't have enough sense to get his fingerprints off of there, but maybe he did. He would because they washed her body with gasoline to get rid of the evidence. If I'd ever heard of using gasoline to clean up evidence and fingerprints and things like that. He didn't ask it right then at the time where I would be able to figure out what he was talking about. Could have been the next day or something. But he asked me if I knew about that, and I told him no, but I said, if you're going to use gasoline to clean up something, why don't you just set it on fire, burn it? And he said, yeah, we thought about that. I always wondered what that meant. Now I know. He was talking about they thought about setting her body on fire. I'm going to just tell you what transpired between Frank and I that I remember about the Black Dahlia. Again, I told you he always said he was taking people and I didn't know where. And I asked him one time, when was the first time you took somebody? And he goes, the first time? Well, you ever hear of the Black Dahlia? I mean, he didn't come right out like that. First he talked about something else and change the subject and get you going off somewhere else. And then later on he would come back. You ever hear of the Black Dahlia? That's his intellectual way of throwing confusion in there for a 17-year-old boy that I was. And I told him I'd heard the name, but I didn't know what it was. I thought it was an actress. And he goes, well, that was our first. And I go, your first what? And he goes, well, I told you we'd take these people. Yeah, but where do you take them? Well, I'm not going to tell you. I told you before. You already forgot. He'd get on my case for forgetting them. He was so smart he didn't forget things, so if I forgot something, I was really dumb. But anyway, he didn't tell me anything about that murder except that he told me that her name was Elizabeth Short. And I, thinking that he'd just taken her somewhere, I didn't know where, I made a joke out of it and asked him, so was she short? And he said, well, she was a hell of a lot shorter when we got done with her. And this is Frank's sick humor. I mean, they severed this girl's body in half. If you go to the wiki on the Black Dahlia, you'll see a picture of her. Someone got in there and got a picture of her body at the site of the murder before the police got to it. The very first time someone told me they thought Frank and the Anglin brothers did this murder, I looked at it and I thought, no, it's not like them to sever a body. But then here recently when I started looking at this, I remember watching them bury a boy who looked like he didn't have his head. And he was real white because he was dead. And I thought he was a mannequin. So I thought it was a mannequin. And then I saw him throw the head in there. And, I told it to the fire department because they were there. There was Frank, after they buried him, they set the place on fire to distract people. And they told me to call the police about it, but the police wouldn't take a call from a 7-year-old boy. I was just a little kid at the time. And I also noticed that she had been violated, and not in the front, in the back, violated with an object. And I also thought, well, that's not like Frank, because on the Halloween card, he used, according to what he told me, he used the pumpkin to cover the skeleton's groin area because he was specifically said, we do not go there, we never go there, we don't touch it, we don't look at it, we don't talk about it. But I think he was trying, he lied about it. They do go there, they did go there, because one of the murders in Texarkana Moonlight Murders, he violated a girl with a pistol. Everything points to Frank Lee Morris. Have any questions for me, put them in the comments, and I'll think about them and see if I don't come up with some more answers to this thing, because oftentimes your comments and questions, when they're not trollish and negative, your comments and questions will cause me to remember more things. This is really depressing to me. I mean, if you go look at the wiki on this girl, and it's just terrible. And this was their first one, you know, according to him. That it's more. So I'm assuming that what he meant was this is when he graduated from torturing and killing cats and little animals that him and the Anglin brothers could catch, and he graduated up to actually taking people. Hope again that this helps you to understand all of these different unsolved mysteries in America that were done by Frank Lee Morris and the Anglin brothers, the genius and his two farmer buddies who liked to help him murder people.